The alarms blared, red lights flashing across the dimly lit corridor. He ran, his boots pounding against the cold metal floor. His heart raced, not just from the chase but from the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. He was just a mechanic, a simple human from Earth, sent to repair a damaged spaceship on the edge of uncharted space. How had it come to this? He turned a corner, skidding to a stop as a group of towering alien soldiers blocked his path. Their armor gleamed under the harsh lights, their weapons aimed directly at him. He raised his hands, gasping for breath. Wait. I didn't mean to, I didn't know. But they didn't understand him. Or maybe they didn't care. One of them stepped forward, hissing something in a language that sounded like a mix of growls and clicks. Before he could react, they grabbed him, their grip like iron. He struggled, but it was useless. They dragged him back the way he had come, toward the chamber he had stumbled into. The chamber. Just thinking about it made his stomach churn. He had been exploring the ship, looking for the source of a strange energy signal, when he found it, a hidden room, filled with glowing crystals and strange machinery. And her. The alien queen. She had been standing in the center of the room, her tall, elegant form radiating power and authority. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, her eyes glowing like twin stars. She had turned to him, and for a moment, he had been frozen in place, unable to move or speak. Then it happened. A pulse of energy had shot out from the crystals, enveloping them both. He had felt a strange warmth, a connection he couldn't explain. And then, her eyes had widened in shock. "What have you done?" she had whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and fear. He hadn't understood. Not until her soldiers arrived, their weapons drawn, their eyes filled with hatred. Now, as they dragged him back to the chamber, he realized the gravity of his mistake. He had done something no one had ever done before. And the alien queen was furious. They threw him to the ground in front of her. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. She was even more terrifying up close, her presence overwhelming. But there was something else in her gaze now, something he couldn't quite place. Fear? Vulnerability? "Do you know what you have done?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the chamber. He shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to fix the ship." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You have done the impossible. You have impregnated me." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He stared at her, his mind racing. "What? That's not possible. I'm human. You're not." "And yet, it has happened," she said, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "My species has never been able to reproduce with another. This is an abomination." He didn't know what to say. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. What did this mean? What would happen to him? To her? The alien queen turned to her soldiers, her voice cold and commanding. "Take him to the cells. I will decide his fate later." As they dragged him away, he couldn't help but glance back at her. She was standing in the center of the chamber, her hands clenched into fists, her eyes glowing with a mix of anger and something else, something he couldn't quite understand. But one thing was clear, his life would never be the same. The cell was cold and dark, the walls made of a smooth, metallic material that seemed to absorb the light. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The alien queen's words echoed in his mind, "You have impregnated me." It still didn't feel real. How could it be? He was just a human, a mechanic from Earth. She was an alien, a queen of a species he didn't even know existed until today. And yet, here he was, locked in a cell, his life hanging in the balance. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. He had to think, to figure out a way out of this mess. But how? He didn't even know where he was, let alone how to escape. And even if he did, where would he go? He was light years away from Earth, surrounded by aliens who saw him as a threat, or worse, an abomination. Meanwhile, in the throne room, the alien queen sat on her ornate chair, her mind racing. Her advisors stood before her, their expressions a mix of anger and disbelief. One of them, a tall, imposing figure with sharp features, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this is an outrage," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The human must be executed immediately. His very existence is a threat to our species." The alien queen clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She knew he was right. The human had done the unthinkable, something that went against the very laws of nature. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to give the order. There was something about him, something she couldn't explain. When their eyes had met in the chamber, she had felt a connection, a strange, almost magnetic pull. It was unsettling, but also intriguing. "Your Majesty," the advisor pressed, his voice sharp. "What is your decision?" She took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. "The human will remain in the cells for now. I will decide his fate when I am ready." The advisor's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. He bowed stiffly and stepped back, his displeasure evident. The other advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to challenge her. For now, at least, the human was safe. Back in the cell, the human male heard the sound of footsteps approaching. He looked up as the door slid open, revealing one of the alien soldiers. The soldier stepped inside, holding a tray of food. It was a strange, gelatinous substance, but he wasn't in a position to complain. He nodded in thanks, but the soldier didn't respond. Instead, he stood there, staring at him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Do you understand me?" the human male asked cautiously. The soldier tilted his head, as if considering the question. Then, to his surprise, he nodded. The soldier said in broken English. "You, human. Dangerous." "I'm not dangerous," he replied quickly. "I didn't mean to do whatever it is I did. I was just trying to fix the ship." The soldier frowned, clearly struggling to understand. "Queen, angry. You, problem." "Yeah, I got that," he muttered. He hesitated, then asked, "What's going to happen to me?" The soldier's expression darkened. "Queen, decide. Maybe, kill." The words sent a chill down his spine. He had known his situation was dire, but hearing it out loud made it all too real. He had to do something, anything, to change his fate. But what? In her private quarters, the alien queen stood by the window, staring out at the vast expanse of space. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, fear, confusion, and something else she couldn't quite name. She had always been strong, decisive, a leader her people could rely on. But now, for the first time in her life, she felt uncertain. She placed a hand on her abdomen, her thoughts drifting to the life growing inside her. It was impossible, and yet it was real. The human had done something no one else could, something that defied all logic. And as much as she hated to admit it, she couldn't ignore the implications. Her species was dying, their numbers dwindling with each passing year. This could be their only hope. But at what cost? She turned away from the window, her resolve hardening. She would speak to the human again. She would find out the truth, no matter what it took. And then she would decide. The alien queen stood outside the human male's cell, her heart pounding in her chest. She had ordered her guards to leave, wanting to speak to him alone. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and she stepped inside, her tall, regal figure casting a long shadow across the room. He looked up, startled. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air thick with tension. Then, she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Do you understand what you have done?" she asked. He swallowed hard, nodding. I think so. But I swear, I didn't mean to. I was just trying to fix the ship. I didn't even know you were there." She studied him, her piercing eyes searching for any sign of deception. But all she saw was fear and confusion, and something else. Honesty. He was telling the truth. She sighed, crossing her arms over her chest. "My species is dying," she said quietly. "We have not been able to reproduce for generations. Our numbers grow smaller every year. And now, this." She placed a hand on her abdomen, her expression unreadable. "What you have done should be impossible. And yet, it has happened." He looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean to cause any harm." "And yet, you have," she said, her voice sharp. "You have disrupted the natural order of things. My people see you as a threat, an abomination. They want you dead." His head snapped up, his eyes filled with panic. "Please. I don't want to die. I just want to go home." She hesitated, her gaze softening slightly. "I do not wish to kill you. But I must think of my people. Of our future." He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Maybe this isn't a bad thing. Maybe it's a chance for your species to survive. If I could do what I did, maybe there's a way to help your people. To save them." She frowned, considering his words. It was a dangerous thought, one that went against everything she had been taught. And yet, she couldn't deny the logic in it. If this human could do what no one else could, perhaps he was the key to her species' survival. But at what cost? Her people would never accept him. They would see it as a betrayal. "You ask me to trust you," she said slowly. "But why should I? You are a stranger, an outsider. You know nothing of my people, of our ways." "I know," he admitted. "But I want to help. I didn't ask for this, but if there's a way I can make things right, I'll do it. Please, just give me a chance." She stared at him for a long moment, her mind racing. Then, finally, she nodded. "Very well. I will give you a chance. But know this, if you betray me, if you harm my people in any way, I will not hesitate to end your life." He nodded quickly, relief flooding his features. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Over the next few days, the alien queen kept the human male close, allowing him to assist her in studying the strange energy that had caused the event. They worked together in secret, away from the prying eyes of her advisors and soldiers. At first, their interactions were tense and formal, but as time went on, they began to open up to each other. He told her about Earth, about his life as a mechanic, and his love for fixing things. She, in turn, shared stories of her people, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Despite their differences, they found common ground, a shared desire to protect what they cared about. But not everyone was pleased with their growing alliance. The alien queen's advisors grew increasingly suspicious, their whispers of betrayal growing louder. One night, as she was returning to her quarters, she was confronted by her most trusted advisor, the same one who had urged her to execute the human. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "What are you doing with the human? The people are talking. They say you have grown, attached to him." She met his gaze, her expression calm but firm. "I am doing what is necessary to ensure the survival of our species. The human may hold the key to our future. I will not let fear and prejudice blind us to that possibility." The advisor's eyes narrowed. "And what of the cost? What of our traditions, our laws? You risk everything for this creature." I risk everything for our survival, she shot back. And if you cannot see that, then perhaps you are the one who is blind. The advisor's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He bowed stiffly and walked away, leaving her alone in the dimly lit corridor. She watched him go, a sense of unease settling in her chest. She knew he would not let this go. And neither would the others. The human male sat in the dimly lit room, his mind racing. He had been working with the alien queen for days now, studying the strange energy that had caused the event. But despite their progress, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The whispers among her people were growing louder, and he had seen the way her advisors looked at him, like he was a disease that needed to be eradicated. He knew he couldn't stay here forever. Sooner or later, someone would act against him. And when that happened, he doubted even the alien queen could protect him. He had to find a way out. But how? He was light years away from Earth, surrounded by aliens who saw him as a threat. He had no ship, no weapons, no allies, except, perhaps, one. The alien queen had shown him kindness, but he couldn't rely on her completely. She had her own people to think about, her own responsibilities. If it came down to it, he wasn't sure she would choose him over them. No, he had to take matters into his own hands. That night, as he lay on the cold floor of his cell, he heard a soft noise outside the door. He sat up, his heart pounding. The door slid open, and one of the alien soldiers stepped inside. It was the same one who had brought him food before, the one who had spoken to him in broken English. "You, come," the soldier said, his voice barely above a whisper. The human male frowned. "What? Why?" The soldier glanced over his shoulder, then back at him. "Danger. They kill you. Soon." His stomach dropped. "Who? The advisors?" The soldier nodded. "You, go. Now." He hesitated, his mind racing. This could be a trap. But what choice did he have? If the soldier was telling the truth, staying here meant certain death. He took a deep breath and stood up. "Okay. Let's go." The soldier led him out of the cell and down a series of dark, narrow corridors. They moved quickly and quietly, avoiding the patrolling guards. The human male's heart pounded in his chest, every sound making him jump. He had no idea where they were going, but he had to trust the soldier. It was his only chance. Meanwhile, the alien queen sat in her throne room, her mind troubled. She had just received word that her advisors were planning to convene a council that could very well decide the human male's fate. She knew what they would say. They would demand his execution, and she wasn't sure she could stop them. She stood up, pacing the room. She had to do something. She couldn't let them kill him. Not after everything they had discovered. Not after the connection they had formed. But what could she do? If she openly defied her advisors, it could lead to a rebellion. Her people were already on edge, their trust in her wavering. As she wrestled with her thoughts, a sudden alarm blared through the ship. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. What was happening? She rushed to the control panel, her eyes scanning the screens. Then she saw it, a security breach in the lower levels of the ship. The human male's cell was empty. Her blood ran cold. Had he escaped? Or had someone taken him? She turned and ran out of the throne room, her mind racing. She had to find him. She had to stop whatever was happening before it was too late. The human male and the soldier reached a small hangar bay, where a sleek, single-pilot ship was docked. The soldier pointed to it. "You, go. Fly." He stared at the ship, then back at the soldier. "What about you? If they find out you helped me." The soldier shook his head. "No matter. You, go. Save yourself." He hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. I won't forget this. He climbed into the ship, his hands trembling as he activated the controls. The ship hummed to life, the engines roaring as it lifted off the ground. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. He had no idea where he was going or how he would survive, but he had to try. As the ship shot out of the hangar bay and into the vastness of space, he glanced back at the alien vessel. For a moment, he thought he saw the alien queen standing in the observation deck, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. Then the ship disappeared into the darkness, leaving her behind. The human male's ship drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly. He had no destination, no plan, just the desperate need to put as much distance between himself and the alien vessel as possible. But as the adrenaline began to fade, he felt a growing sense of guilt. He had left the alien queen behind, and he couldn't shake the image of her standing in the observation deck, her eyes filled with pain. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. What am I doing? He muttered to himself. I can't just run away. Not after everything. As if in response, the ship's console beeped, drawing his attention. He leaned forward, frowning at the screen. A message was coming through, an encrypted transmission. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be her? He activated the message, and the alien queen's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed her emotions. If you are receiving this, it means you have escaped, she said. And it means I have failed to protect you. He stared at the screen, his chest tightening. I'm sorry, he whispered, though he knew she couldn't hear him. I do not know where you are going, she continued, but there is something you must know. Something about my species. We are dying. Our numbers have been dwindling for generations, and we have been unable to reproduce. The event that occurred between us, it was not an accident. It was a miracle. A chance for our survival. He leaned closer, his heart pounding. What was she saying? The energy in that chamber was designed to trigger a biological reaction, she explained. It was meant to allow us to reproduce with other species, but it has never worked, until now. Until you. You are the key to our survival. And that is why my people fear you. They see you as a threat to our traditions, to our way of life. But I see you as something else. As hope. The screen flickered, and her image wavered. I do not know if we will meet again, she said softly. But if you are listening, know this, I do not blame you. And I am grateful for what you have given me. Farewell. The transmission ended, leaving him in stunned silence. He sat back, his mind reeling. So that was it. That was why she had spared him, why she had risked so much to protect him. He wasn't just a prisoner or an abomination. He was the key to her species' survival. But what did that mean for him? Could he really just fly away and leave them to their fate? He thought about the alien queen, about the connection they had formed. She had shown him kindness, even when her own people had turned against her. And now, she was alone, facing the consequences of his escape. He clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. He couldn't run away. Not now. He had to go back. He had to help her. Back on the alien vessel, the alien queen stood in the throne room, facing her advisors. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with anger and suspicion. The lead advisor stepped forward, his eyes blazing. Your Majesty, he said, his voice cold and sharp. The human has escaped. This is a direct result of your leniency. Your attachment to him. She met his gaze, her expression calm but firm. The human is not our enemy. He is our only hope for survival. You may not see it now, but in time, you will understand. The advisor's jaw tightened. And what of our traditions? Our laws? You would throw them all away for this creature? I would do whatever it takes to ensure the survival of our species, she replied, her voice steady. Even if it means challenging our traditions. Even if it means standing alone. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to speak. Finally, the lead advisor bowed stiffly. As you wish, Your Majesty. But know this, the people will not stand for this. And neither will we. He turned and walked away, the other advisors following close behind. The alien queen watched them go, her heart heavy. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she also knew she had no choice. She had to protect her people. And she had to protect the life growing inside her, a life that represented hope, even in the darkest of times. The human male steered his ship back toward the alien vessel, his hands steady on the controls despite the fear gnawing at his chest. He didn't know what he would find when he arrived, but he knew he couldn't stay away. The alien queen's words echoed in his mind, "You are the key to our survival." He couldn't let her down. Not now. As he approached the massive alien ship, he activated the communication system. "This is, the human. I'm coming back. Please don't shoot me." There was a long pause, and for a moment, he thought they might ignore him, or worse, open fire. But then a familiar voice crackled through the speakers. "Why have you returned?" It was her. The alien queen. Her voice was calm, but he could hear the tension beneath it. "I couldn't leave," he said simply. "Not after what you told me. I want to help. If there's a way to save your people, I'll do whatever it takes." There was another pause, and he held his breath, waiting for her response. Finally, she spoke. "Very well. Dock in Hangar Bay 7. I will meet you there." He let out a sigh of relief and guided the ship into the hangar bay. As the doors closed behind him, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu. It wasn't long ago that he had been dragged through these corridors as a prisoner. Now, he was returning as, what? An ally? A friend? He wasn't sure, but he knew one thing, he couldn't let her face this alone. The alien queen stood in the hangar bay, her heart racing as the human male stepped out of the ship. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Then she stepped forward, her expression a mix of relief and frustration. "You should not have come back," she said. "It is too dangerous. My people are divided, and my advisors are planning to overthrow me. If they find you here—" "I know," he interrupted. "But I couldn't just leave. Not after everything. You said I'm the key to your survival. If that's true, then I need to be here. To help." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she nodded. "Very well. But know this, if we are to succeed, we must act quickly. And we must be prepared to face the consequences." He nodded, his resolve hardening. "I'm ready." Together, they made their way to the alien queen's private quarters, where she revealed the full extent of her species' plight. She showed him records of their declining population, their failed attempts at reproduction, and the experiments that had led to the creation of the energy chamber. It was a grim picture, but it also gave him hope. If they could harness the energy that had brought them together, they might be able to save her people. "But there's a problem," she said, her voice heavy. "The energy source we need is located on a nearby planet. It is heavily guarded by a hostile species. Retrieving it will be difficult." He frowned. "How difficult?" "Nearly impossible," she admitted. "But it is our only hope." He took a deep breath, his mind racing. "Then we'll have to find a way. We can't give up now." She nodded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you. For coming back. For believing in me." He smiled faintly. You're not alone in this. We're in it together. The next few hours were a blur of planning and preparation. The alien queen gathered a small team of loyal soldiers, while the human male worked on modifying a ship to withstand the planet's harsh environment. It was risky, but they had no other choice. The fate of her species depended on it. As they prepared to leave, the alien queen turned to him, her expression serious. Once we land, there will be no turning back. Are you sure you want to do this? He met her gaze, his heart pounding. I'm sure. She nodded, then placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and solidarity. Then let us go. The small ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, its hull rattling as it battled against the turbulent winds. The human male gripped the controls tightly, his eyes fixed on the terrain below. The planet was a barren wasteland, its surface scarred by jagged mountains and deep, dark crevices. Somewhere in this hostile environment was the energy source they needed, and the hostile species that guarded it. The alien queen sat beside him, her expression calm but focused. She had traded her regal attire for a sleek, armored suit, her presence as commanding as ever. Behind them, a handful of her most loyal soldiers prepared their weapons, their faces grim. They all knew the risks. This mission was a suicide run, but it was their only chance. There, the alien queen said, pointing to a faint glow in the distance. That is where we must go. He nodded, steering the ship toward the light. As they approached, the glow grew brighter, revealing a massive structure built into the side of a mountain. It was ancient and imposing, its walls covered in strange, glowing symbols. But what caught his attention were the guards, dozens of them, heavily armed and patrolling the area. This isn't going to be easy, he muttered. No, she agreed. But we have no choice. They landed the ship a safe distance away, hidden behind a cluster of rocks. The team moved quickly and quietly, their movements precise and coordinated. The human male followed closely, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't a soldier, but he was determined to do his part. As they approached the structure, the alien queen signaled for them to stop. We must split up, she whispered. You and I will retrieve the energy source. The others will create a diversion. He nodded, though the thought of separating from the group made his stomach churn. But he trusted her. She knew what she was doing. The diversion worked. The soldiers launched a coordinated attack, drawing the guards away from the structure's entrance. The alien queen and the human male slipped inside, their footsteps echoing in the dark, narrow corridors. The air was thick with tension, every sound making them pause and listen. Finally, they reached the heart of the structure, a vast chamber filled with the same glowing crystals he had seen on the alien ship. In the center of the room was a massive, pulsating crystal, its light so bright it was almost blinding. That's it, the alien queen said, her voice filled with awe. The energy source. They moved quickly, gathering as much of the crystal as they could carry. But as they turned to leave, a voice rang out, cold and mocking. Leaving so soon? They froze, their hearts sinking as a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was the alien queen's most trusted advisor, the one who had urged her to execute the human male. His eyes gleamed with triumph as he aimed a weapon at them. I knew you would come here, he said. And I knew you would bring him. The alien queen stepped forward, her voice steady but laced with anger. What are you doing? This is treason. Treason, he spat. You are the traitor. You have betrayed our people, our traditions, for this creature. But no more. I will end this, here and now. Before she could react, he fired. The blast struck her in the chest, sending her crashing to the ground. The human male stared in horror, his mind racing. He had to do something. But what? The advisor turned to him, his weapon raised. And you are the cause of all this. You will die here, far from your home, and no one will mourn you. As the advisor prepared to fire, the human male did the only thing he could think of. He lunged forward, tackling the advisor to the ground. They struggled, the weapon clattering out of reach. The advisor was strong, but desperation gave the human male an edge. He managed to pin the advisor down, his hands gripping the alien's throat. You will not win, the advisor gasped, his eyes blazing with hatred. The human male tightened his grip, his heart pounding. He had never killed anyone before, but he knew he had no choice. If he didn't stop the advisor, they would all die. Finally, the advisor went still, his body slumping to the ground. The human male let go, his hands trembling. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. He had to help the alien queen. He rushed to her side, his heart breaking at the sight of her lying there, her breathing shallow. Hang on, he said, his voice choked with emotion. We're getting out of here. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with pain but also gratitude. You came back, she whispered. You saved me. Of course I did, he said, his voice breaking. I couldn't let you go. Not like this. The human male helped the alien queen to her feet, his heart pounding as he supported her weight. She was weak, her breathing labored, but her eyes burned with determination. We must leave, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They will come for us. He nodded, slinging the bag of energy crystals over his shoulder. I've got you. Let's go. They moved as quickly as they could, the alien queen leaning heavily on him as they retraced their steps through the dark corridors. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance, her loyal soldiers were still fighting, buying them time. But he knew it wouldn't last long. They had to get back to the ship. As they reached the entrance, a group of hostile guards appeared, blocking their path. The human male froze, his stomach dropping. There were too many of them, and he was no fighter. But before he could react, the alien queen straightened, her voice ringing out with authority. Stand down, she commanded, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The guards hesitated, clearly unnerved by her presence. But then one of them stepped forward, his weapon raised. You are not our queen, he snarled. You are a traitor. The alien queen's expression hardened. I am your queen. And I will not let you stand in the way of our survival. With a strength that belied her injuries, she raised her hand, and a pulse of energy shot out, knocking the guards off their feet. The human male stared in awe, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. But there was no time to dwell on it. Come on, she said, her voice strained. We must go. They stumbled out of the structure and into the harsh, rocky terrain. The ship was still hidden behind the rocks, but it felt impossibly far away. The sounds of pursuit grew louder behind them, and he knew they were running out of time. When they finally reached the ship, the human male helped the alien queen inside, his hands trembling as he activated the controls. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted off the ground just as a group of hostile guards emerged from the structure, their weapons blazing. Hold on, he shouted, steering the ship sharply to avoid the incoming fire. The alien queen slumped into the co-pilot's seat, her face pale but determined. We must warn my people, she said. The advisor's betrayal, it is only the beginning. There will be others. He nodded, his mind racing. We'll figure it out. But first, we need to get you to safety. As the ship shot into the sky, he glanced back at the planet, his heart heavy. They had the energy source, but the cost had been high. And he knew the hardest part was yet to come. Back on the alien vessel, chaos had erupted. The alien queen's absence had emboldened her enemies, and the ship was in turmoil. Her loyal soldiers fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. The air was thick with tension, the sense of impending doom palpable. When the human male's ship docked in the hangar bay, they were met with a scene of devastation. The corridors were littered with debris, and the sounds of battle echoed through the ship. The alien queen's face darkened as she took it all in, her expression a mix of anger and sorrow. "We must end this," she said, her voice filled with resolve. He nodded, helping her to her feet. "What's the plan?" She met his gaze, her eyes burning with determination. "We confront them. Together." They made their way to the throne room, where the remaining advisors and their followers had gathered. The room fell silent as the alien queen entered, her presence commanding despite her injuries. The lead advisor stepped forward, his eyes filled with hatred. "You dare return?" he spat. "After everything you have done?" "I am your queen," she said, her voice steady and strong. "And I will not let you destroy our people." The advisor sneered. "You are no queen. You are a traitor. And you will pay for your crimes." Before anyone could react, the alien queen raised her hand, and a pulse of energy filled the room. The advisors and their followers were thrown back, their weapons clattering to the ground. The human male stared in awe, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. But there was no time to dwell on it. "Come on," she said, her voice strained. "We must go." They stumbled out of the structure and into the harsh, rocky terrain. The ship was still hidden behind the rocks, but it felt impossibly far away. The sounds of pursuit grew louder behind them, and he knew they were running out of time. When they finally reached the ship, the human male helped the alien queen inside, his hands trembling as he activated the controls. The engines roared to life, and the ship lifted off the ground just as a group of hostile guards emerged from the structure, their weapons blazing. "Hold on," he shouted, steering the ship sharply to avoid the incoming fire. The alien queen slumped into the co-pilot's seat, her face pale but determined. "We must warn my people," she said. "The advisor's betrayal, it is only the beginning. There will be others." He nodded, his mind racing. "We'll figure it out. But first, we need to get you to safety." As the ship shot into the sky, he glanced back at the planet, his heart heavy. They had the energy source, but the cost had been high. And he knew the hardest part was yet to come. Back on the alien vessel, chaos had erupted. The alien queen's absence had emboldened her enemies, and the ship was in turmoil. Her loyal soldiers fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. The air was thick with tension, the sense of impending doom palpable. When the human male's ship docked in the hangar bay, they were met with a scene of devastation. The corridors were littered with debris, and the sounds of battle echoed through the ship. The alien queen's face darkened as she took it all in, her expression a mix of anger and sorrow. "We must end this," she said, her voice filled with resolve. He nodded, helping her to her feet. "What's the plan?" She met his gaze, her eyes burning with determination. "We confront them. Together." They made their way to the throne room, where the remaining advisors and their followers had gathered. The room fell silent as the alien queen entered, her presence commanding despite her injuries. The lead advisor stepped forward, his eyes filled with hatred. "You dare return?" he spat. "After everything you have done?" "I am your queen," she said, her voice steady and strong. "And I will not let you destroy our people." The advisor sneered. "You are no queen. You are a traitor. And you will pay for your crimes." Before anyone could react, the alien queen raised her hand, and a pulse of energy filled the room. The advisors and their followers were thrown back, their weapons clattering to the ground. The human male stared in awe, his heart pounding. "This ends now," she said, her voice echoing with power. "I will not let you tear us apart. Not when we are so close to survival." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The advisors looked at each other, their resolve wavering. Finally, one by one, they bowed their heads, their defiance crumbling. The alien queen stood in the throne room, her presence commanding as she addressed her people. The room was filled with her loyal soldiers, the remaining advisors, and the human male, who stood quietly at her side. The air was thick with tension, but also with a sense of hope, a hope that had been absent for far too long. "My people," she began, her voice steady and strong. "We have faced great challenges. We have been divided, betrayed, and brought to the brink of destruction. But we have also found something precious, something that gives us a chance to survive, to thrive, and to rebuild." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "This human," she said, gesturing to the man beside her, "has shown us that there is strength in unity, in understanding, and in compassion. He is not our enemy. He is our ally. And together, we will forge a new future." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Then, slowly, one by one, the advisors and soldiers bowed their heads in respect. The human male felt a lump in his throat, his heart swelling with emotion. He had never imagined he would be part of something like this, something so much bigger than himself. In the days that followed, the alien vessel became a hive of activity. The energy crystals they had retrieved were carefully studied and integrated into the ship's systems, their power harnessed to stabilize the alien queen species. The process was slow and painstaking, but it worked. For the first time in generations, there was hope for their survival. The human male worked alongside the alien queen and her people, his skills as a mechanic proving invaluable. He repaired damaged systems, helped design new technologies, and even taught some of the aliens about Earth and humanity. In return, they shared their knowledge and culture, creating a bond that went beyond words. But it wasn't just about technology or survival. It was about connection. The alien queen and the human male spent hours talking, sharing their thoughts and dreams. They laughed, they argued, and they grew closer with each passing day. It was a relationship built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding, a relationship that defied all odds. One evening, as they stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars, the alien queen turned to him. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." He smiled, his heart full. "I should be thanking you. You've given me a purpose, a home. I never thought I'd find something like this." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "You are a part of us now. And no matter where you go, you will always have a place here." He nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. "I know. And I'll never forget that." As time went on, the alien queen species began to flourish. The energy crystals not only stabilized their population but also opened up new possibilities for growth and exploration. The human male became a bridge between their world and Earth, fostering a new era of cooperation and understanding. The story of the alien queen and the human male spread far and wide, becoming a symbol of hope and unity. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a chance for redemption, for connection, and for a new beginning. Epilogue, a lesson for all. The alien queen stood before her people one last time, her heart filled with pride and gratitude. "We have come so far," she said, her voice echoing through the room. "But our journey is not over. There will be challenges ahead, and we must face them together. Let us remember the lessons we have learned, the power of unity, the strength of compassion, and the importance of hope." She turned to the human male, her eyes filled with warmth. "And let us never forget the one who showed us the way." The room erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the ship and out into the stars. The human male felt a tear roll down his cheek, his heart overflowing with emotion. He had come so far, from a simple mechanic to a hero, a friend, and a symbol of hope. As the celebration continued, he looked out at the stars, his mind filled with thoughts of the future. There was so much to do, so much to explore. But for now, he was content. He had found his place in the universe, and he knew that no matter what lay ahead, he would face it with courage, with love, and with hope.